Welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Philip Wesley, the Mile High Mouth, and today's episode of Suki Nihon, we are going to review episode 22 of Season 2 of Steven Universe. We'll get back to the earlier episodes eventually, but I know we're starting out kind of on a weird one, but we want to be current with these, okay? So just put up with it. We'll get earlier episodes on, and you'll get to hear my thoughts on those as well, if you care to hear about my thoughts. Anyways, episode 22, The Answer. Pretty much what happens is Garnet, who is a fusion of Sapphire and Ruby, wakes Steven up in the back of his truck. I know, it's weird. Weird kid. And she decides to tell Steven about the wonderful way that fusions are made. Or rather, how she met. How Sapphire, the story of how Sapphire and Ruby first met. And they go on for 7 or 8 seasons, and then at the end of it, she ends. No, never mind, wrong thing. I should bring up a pineapple or something for. Nah. Anyways, How I Met Your Ruby, How I Met Your Sapphire. That was the joke we were going for. Didn't really work out, so we're just going to take that joke and put it aside. Okay. Anywho, she decides to tell Steven about this. See, thousands and thousands of years ago, I won't say the exact time, but Sapphire was coming to Earth to help quell a rebellion. You see, Sapphire has the ability to look along timelines, or rivers, I guess you could say. Time is like a river, ever-changing as it flows, but it goes one way until something causes it to diverge. It's that type of theory. Anyway, she has future vision, and that's why she's useful. Ruby, or one of 3 rubies, is intended to help her with this. And what Ruby does is act as a bodyguard. You see, there's been some rebels, Rose Quartz and Pearl, and Blue Diamond is there to try and capture those rebels who are trying to stop the colonization of Earth. What happens is that Ruby kind of gets to know Sapphire a little bit through some small little things and develops kind of a small crush, or rather a sense of devotion or loyalty. What happens is everything doesn't go according to plan. Sapphire knew that 2 of her Ruby guards would be taken out, and that she would be taken out, and then the rebels, Rose Quartz and Pearl, would be captured. Instead, well, here's the thing that's interesting. The 3 rubies fuse into a larger ruby to attack Pearl, and they fail. Ruby is okay. The other 2 rubies have already been put back into crystals, and Pearl is setting up to kill, rather poof, or revert to crystallization, Sapphire. And Ruby, on an impulse, decides to jump and push Sapphire out of the way. They sync up, and then they fuse, which astonishes the court because at no time before this have two gems of different kinds fused. You see, the homeworld gems are kind of their own little socialist utopia. Everyone has a purpose and a place inside of a caste. Socialism at its total is about the good of society as a whole. In order for the good of society, there has to be people who are at the bottom of it, who may occasionally be given parts and bits of the top. What people don't realize is that socialism in itself is a let them eat cake type of situation. And by cake, we don't mean fluffy, delicious cake. Cake, we mean the burnt bits of bread inside of the ovens, because that's what they meant. That's what's always bothered me about the French Revolution and such. People always think let them eat cake meant fineries. It did not. It literally meant burnt bread scum. Anyways, they fuse, become Garnet, and this shocks everyone. They unfuse, and Ruby's about to be executed, so Sapphire grabs Ruby's hand and escapes. Before this, because of the fusion and the confusion about the fusion between Sapphire and Ruby, the rebels got away. They got away, they did not get the plans to Death Star, but whatever. Anyways, Ruby and Sapphire fall down to Earth, and they're lost, and they talk. They realize that there were all these things, all these plans that they had that no longer mean anything. Sapphire's, for the first time, uncertain about her own fate. And Ruby is just as confused. They talk, get to know each other a little, and then fuse again to become Garnet. Then they run into Pearl and not Amethyst, Rose Quartz, who then welcomes them to Earth, like welcome to Earth, and decides that there's something new, and the new is good. At the end of this, Garnet says that she was confused and she wanted to know what the answer was to all of this stuff. And the answer is love. It's like the fifth element. The answer is love. It's like what it doesn't have. Love. But I do have a few problems with this episode. For one, I guess they couldn't really give you a real good reason for this. They just kind of, you see, Garnet, or rather Ruby and Sapphire, are shown to have a very strong relationship. Stuff based off of a first at sight infatuation doesn't always work. I'm sorry. There's no such thing as love at first sight. There's infatuation at first sight. But love is something you work for. Love is something you earn. Love is something you deserve. Love is something you give. Love between two people is a relationship that's complicated. It's got its ups and its downs, and we're not really given a lot of that in this 11-minute episode. What you get, though, is a start. It's not the answer itself. The answer has to be found thousands of years later or so, of years and years and years of Ruby and Sapphire being Garnet. It doesn't automatically happen. But in this particular cartoon, they kind of imply that maybe there's more to it, because there are issues that Garnet and rather Ruby and Sapphire have in this series that we've seen in previous episodes. Now that's important to know, because that's what makes these characters interesting and complex. A few disturbing things, though, I want to mention. Apparently, the idea of multi-gem fusions hadn't been seen before by Blue Diamond and some of the other Homeworld gems. And it might be that Garnet, you gave them the idea for the cluster. And that's horrible. Also, one more thing. I'm going to have to note on this. Rose Quartz can't possibly be one of the diamonds. That means that there are more like Rose Quartz. And this series will probably bring that up at some point. That Rose Quartz is part of a set, part of a thing, a line of gems. She's not unique. And I want to see, and I can't wait to see, how Steven and Steven's father and the other crystal gems handle that when fully confronted with it. That's going to be an interesting payoff. And a tragic one, because a lot of gems kind of look very similar to each other. Especially ones in the same line, because they are. And there's some interesting little things and potential. Overall, not a bad episode. Cute. Some interesting information given. Some interesting timelines. So people who are really into the lore will be happy with this episode. I was okay with this episode. If you like this episode, go ahead and comment below in the comments below. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until the next episode comes out, you are now caught up.